All right, so what we are going to be doing today, we're going to be wrapping up chapter 7.2. We're going to finish off what is title locking because that is where we stopped. And then we're going to review your homework that you should have completed so we can see if you got the correct answers. Alright, so to get us started, we're going to, then when we're finished with the questions, we review the entire chapter, ensure you guys are following on the chapter before we move on to anything else. To get us started with the chapter, title lock-in, we're going to have, let's see, Karishma, can you start the reading for us?
Title locking. Rows and columns in a spreadsheet can be locked, fixed or frozen so that they remain on the screen and do not scroll when you scroll around the sheet. Locked rows remain stationary when you perform vertical scrolling, whereas locked columns remain stationary when you perform horizontal scrolling. Locking both rows and columns allows you to place tiles in your spreadsheet that are always displayed. Data in fixed rows and columns cannot be edited. You must perform any data anything in these rows and columns before you fix them. If you try to select a cell in a fixed row or column, the entire row or column is selected, just as if you selected a row or column heading.
Great. So, and basically the rest is instructions how to use it. Now, have you guys ever had the experience? Um, it might not be in my in spreadsheet, but it might be in another program, maybe Word or something. Say for instance you have a table. Um, this table has numbers, so it's going to be numbering whoever is in the table. And then we have first name, last name, subject, grade. So I'm just gonna put in one example. Karishma from English, she got 70. Right. So say for instance we're creating a table and we're putting in this data into this table here. You guys ever had the experience of, in any program, when you go to the bottom of the table, you end up with a situation like this here. You have to type in information. You have to type in the information, and but you can't see the headings. So you don't know, you can't remember if this is the first name. So you end up going and type Watson here, and then when you go over here, but you can't remember if this is the first name column, if it's the last name column. So you end up scrolling all the way to the top, look at the heading, scroll back down, and type in the information. Any of you ever experienced that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have one person. Good. So it can be a pain. It can be difficult. It can make your tasks a little harder because you gotta be going up and down in order to put in that data in the table. Do we have a new student? Because I'm noticing a strange name. Or is somebody joining with another account? Lal? Remember, if you join with the wrong name, that's basically like I'm gonna mark you absent because I won't know who you are. All right, so yeah, we can come across this issue here when we are putting in information. So here comes basically title lock-in to the rescue. It's here to help us so that we don't have to go up and down all the time to enter data. So maybe we're still at the bottom here and we have to type in data. Instead of going up and down, we can still basically see the headings. So that is title lock-in. It locks the title so that no matter how you scroll, you will be able to see it. So how do we use title lock-in? Well, you go to the View tab. Please remember it's under the View tab. Under the View tab, you're going to see the Windows section. And in the Windows section, you're going to see an option called Freeze Pane. So notice it's not the same title lock-in. You're going to see Freeze Pane. So those two names, they're referring to the same thing, title lock-in and Freeze Pane. So under this option here of Freeze Pane, what we're going to do, we're going to use the second option. We're going to start with that first. So the second option says name freeze top row. This option always freezes the top row. And based on our spreadsheet here, what is the top row? Anyone want to make a guess? What is the top row?
So the first one with first name, last name, subject, and group.
Right, that is our top row. That is correct. So it doesn't matter what spreadsheet you open, how many sheets you open, row number 1 is always going to be your top row. So please remember that. So whenever you use this second option here to freeze top row, it means it's always going to freeze row number 1. So let me do that over again. Look at this line here. This line that is between row 1 and row 2, look at it. That's going straight across. You're going to notice that when I click on it, it's going to get a little darker. You guys notice it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
That there is an indication that this row here is locked. It is frozen. Let me see if I maybe if I zoom in a little more, the rest of you can see. So notice the line is a bit pale for those who cannot see. The lines are pale, but when I choose the freeze top row, it got slightly darker. And it went straight across there. See it now? Okay, good. So that there is an indication that you would have frozen this top row here. So when I scroll now, notice I can see my title. Notice the difference here, row 1 and row 8. So I can continue to scroll. So I can be still at the bottom here, and I am entering somebody's name at the bottom here. And I don't have to be scrolling up and down to see the information. So that is the benefit there of title lock-in, for you to see the title as you're scrolling. Now we are going to, if you want to unfreeze, you can notice that the first option, once it is showing unfreeze, that also means you would have frozen something. So you choose that unfreeze option and it's no longer frozen. Good. So that is freezing the first row. Now the last option, which name is freeze first column, that is to freeze the first column. Well, this is straightforward. The first column is going to be column A. So no matter, once again, whatever sheet you open, column A is always that first column. So the last option of freezing the first column is always going to freeze column A. So once again, look at the line. Look at the line coming down between A and B. Look at the line coming down. And when I use the option, you're going to notice it gets a little darker. You guys saw it?
Yes, sir.
Good. So that there is indicating you would have frozen the column. That's how you can know the column was frozen. So when you scroll horizontally now, you're going to see that column. So no matter how much I scroll out, I'm going to still see that column. I have A, and I'm still at R, S, T, and so on. Now, so it might be a bit of a tricky thing to remember. It's based on this piece of information here. Once you would have locked a row, you would only notice it if you scroll vertically, up and down. So if we go back to the spreadsheet and we unfreeze and we log back the row, vertically is up and down. You're going to only notice you froze that row if you go up and down. But if you were still like this on the spreadsheet and you scroll horizontally, it won't make much of a difference. So it's only when you're scrolling vertically, then you're going to really notice the effect for locking a row. Vice versa for the column. If you lock a column, only if you scroll horizontal, that is when you are going to notice it. So we're going to lock the column now. Column A is locked, and only when you scroll horizontal would you be able to see the effect. Or basically that is when you would mainly use it. When you scroll vertically, you're still seeing the changes in the column. So you're not seeing that first rows of information and so on. So just take note of that. Good. So that is the first, the second, and the last option. Now, the first option, freeze pane. This option here is basically used to freeze whatever row or column you want. So unlike the last two, freeze top row, freeze first column, those freeze as the name indicates. It freezes the top row, freezes the first column. But there is no option to freeze second row, freeze second column, freeze third column, freeze the third row. So we have to use the freeze pane option. So to use that, you basically highlight the you basically make the cell active as to where you want the column to be frozen. So say for instance, I want from row 2 and above to be frozen. So you simply highlight below that row. If I want column A to be frozen, I simply highlight to the right. So you're making the cell active basically to the right and below of what you want to freeze. So I'm going to put my cursor at B3 and I'm going to use the freeze pane option. And remember to look for the line. The line is going to appear across this way. So look for it. Anyone of you notice it? We have two lines now. Two lines going across. That's indicating we would have just frozen the column and the two rows at the top here. So if I zoom out, so if I scroll down, those two rows are frozen. And if I scroll horizontally, that one column there is frozen. So say for instance the column was the table was wider, I could have scrolled out and still see more information. So say for instance a more better use case of freezing would have been also to see the name. So if I highlight here, that means the everything up to the names will be frozen. So because remember that's after the column here, column C. So freeze pane, notice the lines appeared where you want to freeze. So if I scroll horizontally now, say for instance I was putting in more information across the table for these rest of students, I could have easily seen the name for who I was putting in the information for. And when I scroll down, I can basically still see the headings at the top and whichever student that I want to put in the information for. So that is how you use the freeze pane option, and that is basically the use of the freeze pane option. And once again, the unfreeze, that is basically where you take it off. Are you guys following?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Anybody confused?
Sir, can you go over how to freeze other than the first row and the first column? Can you go over that, please?
Okay, good. So to freeze the, which one did you say? The first row and first column?
No, other than that.
Okay, good. Because these two are straightforward. You don't need to select anywhere. You don't need to choose anywhere. You just select the option. You don't even need to click anywhere in the sheet. That's not necessary, but you just choose the option and it uses the first row and first column. Good. But for freezing a row or column, any row or any column, you basically say you have to determine first what rows or row you want to freeze and what column or columns that you want to freeze. So say in my case, I want to freeze just the first column, and I also want to freeze just just the first row and just the first column. That's all I want to freeze. So I determine there what I want to freeze. So what you need to do now, the column that you want to freeze, you need to pick a cell after it. I want to freeze column A, I need to pick a cell after that column. Any one of these cells would have worked. But the row that I want to freeze, I need to pick the row that is right after it. So that is going to be the row that has Karishma's name inside of it. That is right after the row that I want to freeze. And it's also right after the column that I want to freeze. So once I found basically that sweet spot of row and column, I go to the freeze pane and I select the option, and it would have frozen the first column and the first row and the first column for me. Did that help?
Yes, sir.
Alright, anyone else still confused?
Sir, I have a question. What if you only want to freeze column C and not freeze column A and B at the same time?
That won't be possible. So just see column C and not C, A, and B. Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
That would not be possible because remember it's before the column. So even if you freeze, so I'm going to select a cell just after column C and freeze. So I'm going to go out. It won't be possible because it is right after, is before the column C. So it won't allow you. In that case, what you can do if you don't want to see column A and column B is basically to make it hidden. So you make it smaller so that you do not see the information. I'm not sure if this is I don't think this is a topic in spreadsheet, but you can basically make a cell hidden. Actually, we looked at it when we were looking at default sizes, column width and row height. If their sizes go to 0, you would basically make them hidden. So if I freeze here now, then as I scroll back and forth, I'm only going to see column C now. So that's basically the only way you can get rid of columns without deleting their information, so that you don't have to see them. But to bring them back, you basically have to, if you notice my cursor, I'm sure you guys can see it. The normal cursor, when you go between columns and rows, look at it, it's a line with 2 arrows pointing left and right. That's my cursor, look at the cursor. But notice when I go over here, it's a double line with 2 arrows pointing left and right. This here is basically, you could call it like an unhide icon. So when I double click here, it unhided that it unhide column B, and I'm going to do the same again, and it unhide column A. So that's how you unhide a column. So I'm going to do it outside here so that you in the center so that you can see it a little better. So if you bring in the width to directly 0, you can notice there's a double line here. Notice it's no longer a single line but a double line. That's indicating a column or a row would have been hidden. So if I bring this up also, notice a double line there. So to simply bring it back, you double click on it. You double click on it and it would unhide that row or column. If you also go to, if you right click on it, you can see the option to hide and the option to unhide. But I've noticed I've never really gotten that unhide option to work. Only the hide option. But if you highlight both, no? Yeah, so it seems you have to highlight both of them and then right click and use the unhide option. So hide, highlight the 2, unhide. It's not gonna work. Right. But the unfortunate thing about unhide, it only unhides one row or column at a time. So basically you need to be careful with it. Say for instance you're gonna hide a lot of columns. Just hide all of those columns. When you're unhiding, it doesn't unhide all of them at the same time. So you gotta be careful. If you're gonna hide a lot of them, you're gonna take a little while for you to unhide. So actually that doesn't normally work. I wonder because it has information inside of it. Let me try empty, some empty cells. Maybe because of how I hid it. So let's see. Dot. So those few are hidden. So can you unhide? Okay. Why is it not working? But as you can see, you can also drag it out. Not sure why the double click wasn't working there. If I highlight, okay, so it seems it depends upon how you would have hidden the columns or the row. If you highlight all of them and you would have hidden them, it would unhide based on that highlight you would have made. Alright, I hope that additional information didn't confuse anybody more. Any other questions?
Sir,
Yes?
sir, can you please repeat how to unhide it, unhide the letter after hiding it?
Alright, so you have quite a few options as to unhide. So say this column here is hidden. You can notice the double line there. Now normally when you double click on it, it's supposed to unhide. But for some reason it's not working now. So you can simply click on it and drag it out. And that would unhide. Let me try and see if the highlight is gonna work. Right. So as you can see what I just did there, you highlight the two column or how much ever row it is. The two row, you use the shift key and you select the two row, you highlight it, and you right click on it and use the unhide option. Did that help?
Yes, sir.
Alright. So you got click and drag or highlight and right click and unhide. I'm not sure why the double click is not working anymore. I'm wondering if it's because of hide.
Sir, just double click and it's working on my laptop.
Yeah, it's supposed to work. Not sure why it's not working anymore on mine. Hide. Yeah, sometimes these software just give issues. Let me try a row. Okay, it worked in a row. I wonder because does it need information, right? Oh, I think that is it. Right, it needs information. Anybody want to make a guess as to why? There's actually a simple reason. There's actually a very simple reason as to why when you double click, it gives you, it unhides that way. What works like that? When you double
Sir, Autofit.
Autofit, that is it. That is why it is working with information inside of it. Because Autofit automatically fits to the largest piece of data. So that's why it is working. So, but in a normal case, normal scenario, you're gonna be hiding in columns and rows with information inside of it. So that's why in a normal case it would work. You won't have any issue like how it was happening there. Great. Any other questions before we move on?
No, sir.
All right. So we went off a bit. So what we were looking at is title locking. So we looked how to lock any titles that we might have in a table. If we have titles in a column, if we have titles in a row, we know how to lock those titles so that whenever we are scrolling, we can see the information in our spreadsheet. All right. So what we're gonna do now? We are going to look at our homework that you guys should have completed, and we're gonna review the questions to see if you guys got the correct answers. So I'm gonna call on you one by one. Every person's gonna get their turn to give an answer. And I hope you guys are going to take note of the answer in case you got something wrong. At least take note of the correct answer. But we're gonna start from the top. Amelie, or this time we're gonna start from the bottom. So we don't usually start from the bottom. Tasani, for question number one, explain the similarity or differences between a workbook, a worksheet, and a spreadsheet.
Differences between is that in Excel and some other publishers, a spreadsheet would be the type of application you use. A worksheet would be the rows and columns where you, and a workbook would be the file that contains more than one worksheets.
Good. Let's have another one, Stavet. Stavet. If you didn't do the
Could I answer, sir?
you'll get your turn, Emmanuel. If you didn't do the homework and I'm calling and you just let me know so that we can move on quickly. Shermany. Shermany. The two of them.
Yes, sir.
Okay, she's awake. Question number one.
Sir, a workbook is a collection of sheets, while a worksheet is a single sheet on a row column, whereas the spreadsheet is a grid of cells organized in rows and columns.
Okay. The rest of you, are you in agreement? Anybody disagree with anything that Shermany or Tasani said? No answer?
I agree with them, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I agree.
Good. So, um, spreadsheet is basically the only term that can have a double meaning. The workbook, that usually refers to the entire file, the entire spreadsheet, you can see, that would have all of the pages inside of it. And the individual page are going to be called the worksheets. Each individual sheet is like a literal book with different pages or sheets inside of it. And spreadsheet, that can refer to basically the entire file that has all the data inside of it, all of the pages and so on. Or it can refer to the program, the spreadsheet program itself. Good. So, for each of the following, state whether it is a function or a formula. Shalan, first one.
Sir, I have the first one as a function.
Great, that's correct. Shane, what is the second one?
Sir, I have that one as a formula.
Formula, good. The next one, third one, that's going to be Cheyenne.
Sir, that's a function.
Great. Robert, 4.
Sir, a formula.
Formula, great. Rizwan, 5.
Sir, I have a function.
Good. Roshana, 6. You were unmuted, but we didn't hear anything. Formula. Okay. Are you sure about that? We're at 6. This one here. Okay, great. Function is correct. And lastly, Ray Mario, the last one.
Sir, it's a formula.
Formula. Good.
Sir.
That's correct. So all of those are correct. Functions and formulas. So Fulan, you're gonna get the bonus question. Based on all of those answers there, when we were stating what is a function, what is a formula, how would you differentiate or tell a person the difference or state the difference between a function and a formula? How do we know the difference?
So the way I know the difference is the beginning. You have for functions, it always begins with either sum, max, average, or min.
Mhm. So
And for formulas, you have the signs.
signs including
The plus sign, I think it's the hyphen, the forward slash, and the star thing.
good.
Yeah.
All right, good, good. So that's how you differentiate between functions and formula. Good. Now, please take note that sum, max, and min and average, they're not the only functions. We have more of them. So basically, once you see the name of something at the beginning, that would indicate it is a function. Basically, once you see the name of the function at the beginning, that is a function that is being used. And basically also brackets and ranges inside of it, that's indicating a range. Can anybody remember if we can use a range in a formula? No one can remember? So if I have 4 and 4 here, and I try to use 3/4 so that I get a good range, and I try to use and 5 over 6 over here, so equal. Remember, our range is going to be actually I don't want to do that because that is going to ruin one of the questions. I'll come back to that. So going back to the difference between function and formula, you can notice that the formula has the operators. Formulas, you notice they're showing the operators. So the asterisk, the hyphen, the subtraction sign, the division sign, they're being seen there. But in a function, where is the operators? Because remember, they're doing calculations. But where are the operators? Anybody? No one? No one's gonna make an attempt? In a function, where is the operators? Where? How does it know to add? How does it know to subtract? How does it?
Sir, would it be in the name?
Right, you can say that. Right. So it's basically built into the function. That's what we That's how we describe a function. The calculations, the equations, they are built into the function. So that's why you don't see any operators. You don't see any multiplication, any division sign, and so on, because it's all built into the function. Whereas a formula, you have to use the operators. You have to use the multiplication sign, the division sign, because the formula won't know how to calculate those numbers unless you put the operators. So those are some additional details as to how you can tell the difference between a function and a formula. Good. Question number 3. We are at Naishal. Explain why it is useful to name a range. So I think we have to wait on Naishal to type that. Alright, we can give somebody that question and so that Naishal can type another simple answer. Morano.
Okay, so I have it's useful to name a range in the event you want the data to be calculated. It makes the function or the formula shorter by just entering the name of the data. You understand, like when you name your range. It
You're
is also useful when
you're breaking up
it
a
is
bit,
also.
so I'm missing some of the things you're saying.
All right, hold for me, sir. Let me go outside. It's the Wi-Fi. Are you hearing me good now?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Wait, let me find it. Give me a sec.
Naishal, I never said you weren't there. That's saying that I'm going to give you a question, you won't have to type a lot.
Okay, so as I was saying, it is useful to name a range of data in the event you want the data to be calculated. It makes the function or the formula shorter by entering the name of the data. Right? It is also useful when you want to locate the data. Let me see. Like when you're in another worksheet, by simply using the cell location box, you can find the data. Understand?
Good. So I got 1 point from that. It's easy to locate the data. So um, locating the data, that's one useful reason of naming a range. What was the other one you started with?
I said it can be like what I said is it's useful when you want to calculate it. It makes the formula or the function shorter. An example would be like open with equals sum open bracket, the name of the range, and then close bracket. Yeah.
Right. But let's see. Not in all cases, it might make it easier, but it won't make the formula easier. I would say it would make using the cell easier. That would be a better description. It would make using the cell or the range easier because you would remember the name of it so that you would be more effective in using it because instead of remembering what is the actual name of the range, you would remember what name you gave it. So, say, for example, you gave it the name of prime numbers, then that's going to be an easy name for you to type in to use in that function. Good. So, to remember the range, to locate the range, to easily use the range, those are reasons as to why. Alright, so the next question, answer the following questions based on the information in the table. Table 7.17. So the first question is to identify the name of the feature in row 1. So Naishal, you can type that feature. What's the name of that feature? You have Autofit, okay. Monique,
Sir?
4A. Not sure.
No.
Kezia?
Sir, I'm not sure, but I think it's cell C5.
Cell C5. Okay. Karishma?
So I'm not totally sure either.
I'm not sure why this. I had this problem last night also. Robert. Alright, Robert, go ahead.
Sir, is the feature known as merge and center.
Right. It is merge and center. So, um, the first thing what you guys should have taken note of is the rows and columns. If you notice, the columns are coming down. We have A, we have B. Notice the lines coming down. We have C. But for some reason, we don't see any lines here. We don't see any lines here. Any lines here. We're not seeing any lines. So, from the time that you're not seeing any lines, that is basically the merge and center. You are merging a group of cells together to make it one large cell. And that is the merge and center feature. Somebody said Autofit. That is going to be incorrect because even though it might look like Autofit, remember Autofit works for an entire row or an entire column. So all of these data would have had to, all of these cells would have had to stretch also to accommodate this entire size width here. So the feature there is merge and center. Once you're not seeing any lines in between, where you're supposed to be seeing lines, then that is merge and center. Autofit, you're still going to see the normal cells, rows, and columns, and so on. Alright, so moving on. Identify the active cell. What is the active cell? Kezia, you can redeem yourself.
Cell C5, sir. I mistakenly answered that for question 4A.
Oh. Oh, yes, I think you did. Yes, so that's correct though. So, C5, the highlighted border here, that is the active cell. 4C, state the letter for a column that contains a value. I was going to give Monique a chance, but she left. Karishma, you can redeem yourself.
Sir D.
D, that is correct. Monique, question C, state the letter for a column that contains a value.
Sir, can you say that again? You fast.
State the letter for a column that contains a value. Question C, or C.
Sir D.
D, only D. Is it only column D? Anybody?
No, sir.
Sir, there's also column F.
And
Now we're eating away. Column F and
E, sir.
E. Good. So column D, E, and F all contains values. Good. State the row number that does not contain a value.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. For state the letter for a column that contains a value, did you need to have the did you have to list all of those letters?
No.
Okay.
One will be good enough.
Okay.
But it's still good to know that all of them contains a value. Yeah, so D, what is the row number that does not contain a value, Jakia?
One, sir.
One? One what?
Row 1.
Row 1? Good. So row 1, is row 1 the only one?
There's also row 2, I believe.
Good, correct. So row 1 and row 2, and basically row 8 and anything below contains does not contain a value. Good. Say the justification used in cell A5. That's going to be A5. What is the justification? Jasmine, Ramertan. Ramertan.
Could you repeat that?
The justification used in cell A5.
I didn't get that one.
Okay, Primo.
So I'm not sure what was. I just put that.
I didn't hear that clearly.
I'm not sure what it was either. I just put jazz.
Jazz. Okay. Jada.
Sir, can you repeat the question?
What is the justification for A5?
Sir, left alignment.
Left alignment. That is correct. So, if we look at our notes under text alignment, we can notice it says here alignment or justification. They're basically the same thing. So they can use either word to throw you off. Adjustment, justification, alignment, they refer to the same thing. They refer to how the information is positioned in the cell. So we have align left, align right, center, and merge and center. Those are our alignment, those are our justifications. So those are actually the official names: align left, align right. If you hover your cursor over the actual option, you notice it's named align left, align right. But nothing's wrong with saying right align, left align, and so on. The actual name is align left and align right. So what is the alignment for D6 now? So D6, that's going to be alright, well, we already know that's going to be right align because this one here is on the left, that one there is on the right hand side. So that's right align. Now write the range of cells that contain the times for the dance lessons. What is the range of cell that contains the time for the dance lessons, Grace?
Sir, would that be C3 to C6?
That is correct. What is the toe represent? C3 toe?
Sir, I'm not sure for that.
Anybody want to help her? Naisha said colon, that's correct. So colon, it's supposed to be C3 colon C6. So remember 2 is colon. So if you're going to actually write the range, you're not going to write C3 to C6. You're going to write C3 colon C6. Colon represents 2, or you say 2 when you see the colon. Alright. G, write the name of the appropriate function in E7. That's going to be this one here. What's the function used there? Henry? Emmanuel Henry? equals sum E3 colon E6. That is correct. But it was more asking for the name of the function, so that's going to be the sum function. You gave us the complete function, so great on that. So sum was used to calculate all of these values here. So 20 and 30 is 50, then 65, and a 35 is going to give us 100. Good. State the name of the function that should be used to calculate the lowest limit. Leach, Emmanuel Leach.
The lowest limit is min.
Correct. Min is going to be used to calculate the lowest limit. That's the name of that function. Destiny, the highest cost.
Sir Max.
Max. Good. So explain why F6 and F7 are displayed as shown in the figure and describe how we can correct it. So this here, why are they like that? Is that their way of life? Darren?
Sir, can you please repeat the question?
Why are F6 and F7 like this? Why are they looking like this? They like look.
Or because the cell is too small to fit the amount of characters.
Good. Is it for characters? What kind of data in here gives us hashtags when it is too small? Anybody?
Sir, values.
Values. So when the values are too large for a cell, it shows up as hashtags. So how do we fix it now? Dante?
Sir, we simply enlarge the cell.
Good. Basically that. We simply enlarge the cell. We enlarge the height, we enlarge the width to fit the data. Now, I brought up that only values show up like this here as hashtags. If it was labels, what would have happened? Anyone?
Sir, the word would have been cut off. You wouldn't have been able to see the pattern that cannot fit into the cell.
Right. So it's actually two things would happen. If there was information in the cell after, it would get cut off. But if there is no information, what would happen? If there is nothing in the cell right after, and the text is large.
Sir, wouldn't the
Information will go over.
The two of you conflict with each other, didn't hear anything. Go ahead, Dante.
Sir said the information would run over to the other cell.
Good, that's correct. The information would go over to the other cell, or basically it overlaps with the other cells. So it's not in the other cell, it's just basically resting on the other cells. Good. State whether each of the following instructions can be achieved. So we actually covered this today. So hopefully that clarifies some answers. Can we freeze row 1? That's going to be Tumblr. Yes, that is correct. We can freeze row 1. What's the name of that feature? Anybody? Anybody remembers?
Sir, freeze top row?
Correct.
Stop, huh?
Right. Freeze top row. So the freeze top row is always going to freeze that first row. Can we freeze column A? Crystal? Yes. What is the name of that feature or the name of that option? Anyone?
Repeat the question, sir.
Freeze first column. So correct. The question was, what's the name of the feature that freezes the column A? That's going to be freeze first column. So can we freeze row 1 in column A together? Brittany?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that is correct. What's the name of the option? Freeze panel, close enough. Take off the L. Freeze pane.
Sir, freeze pane.
Right. Can we freeze row 2? Can I freeze row 2? Amina.
Sir, yes, you can, but you cannot freeze row 2 only.
What do you mean I cannot freeze row 2 only?
Sir, you will be able to freeze row 2, but it will be frozen along with row 1.
Yes,
And
that's
the feature does not allow you to freeze row 2 by itself.
good. Okay, good. But that's actually what they're referring to, that when you freeze row 2, everything before it gets frozen. So it's not just, the question is not just that they're trying to freeze that one row alone. They understand that everything before is basically going to be a part of it. So can we freeze row 2 and column B? Melly?
Yeah.
Yes, it sounds like struggling. Yes, it's correct though. Yes, you can freeze row 2 and column B. So one thing to take note of when it comes to freeze pane, when it comes to title locking, you can freeze any row and any column. It doesn't matter what is the row, what is the column, you can freeze any row or you can freeze any column. So I could scroll out all the way to that column, I can scroll all the way to this row, and I could highlight right here, and I choose freeze pane, and everything from there was frozen. So as I scroll, notice the difference there. So unless I zoom out, I don't think it's gonna show the rest. No, it's not gonna show the rest because of the position of how I froze it. But wherever you are, that is how it will free. I just think I realized something. Let me see something. If we scroll out B and 1, so I'm here. So if we just want to see column B in row 2 and we freeze, yep, I just learned something. So this actually goes with, you don't need to hide the row or column if you just want to freeze that one column only. If you guys just saw what I did, I scrolled out so that the column or the row is no longer in view, and because they're no longer in view and I froze it in that position, then I won't basically see it back as I scroll. So that's another way of freezing the column. But that's basically if you don't want to see those information in that row or column. All right, any questions on the homework? Anything that you guys didn't understand that was confusing? Any answer that you thought was contradictory. Alright, well, I hope you guys took note of the correct answers. I hope a majority. Yes, Tumblr?
What is number 3 and 5?
What is number 3 and 5? Um,
I mean like the J.
I'm not hearing your question clearly.
Sorry for J, the letter J. What is number 3 and 5?
Okay, all of the answers are yes. You can't freeze all of them. That's what I was saying. It doesn't matter what is the row. It doesn't matter what is the column. You can't freeze it. But it would lead to this part here of your notes that data contained in fixed rows and columns cannot be edited. So if you notice, when I scrolled out, column A in row 1 is not in view, and if I freeze, then no matter how much I scroll, I won't be able to see those columns, column A and row 1 anymore. So I cannot edit them until I unfreeze. So depending on how you do your title locking or your freeze pane, some of the columns you cannot edit it, because I was actually wondering about that statement that you cannot edit, because even though you froze column row 2, you can still type inside of it. And I was wondering why the paragraph mentioned that, but I guess it was referring to that column A and row 1 that I froze basically out of view. So just remember that. Any other questions before we wrap up?
No, sir.
Alright, questions going once, questions going twice. Alright.
No.
If no questions, if no further clarifications, we're going to end here for today. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, sir. Adios.